Helen Taylor, welcome to the lockdown sessions. How are you today?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. And I'm Helen Soden these days.
So, okay, forgive me, of course. Um, we can re-edit that or start again, or we'll just smile when I re-listen to it. Um, Helen, as someone who you and I, when we were introduced, you were introduced to me as a yoga instructor. I know there's other things that you've done in your background, but you're here primarily from a kind of yogi perspective. And coming on here, and we've talked over the last year, we had a few programs we were looking at that didn't quite happen. I've always been fascinated by how yoga helps mental and physical discipline and strength, and something during lockdown that people have struggled with. So I
Mm.
wondered from your point of view, as you're my yogi now for the intended purposes of this lockdown, um, like what have you observed over the last year from yourself and from the people around you in how you've all been behaving?
Ooh. So one thing I've really noticed, which I find fascinating, is that although we're all in the same boat, there's a pandemic, we're locked in, everyone seems to be having a very different experience. So there are all things, I speak to my friends and there are things that we can relate to on, feeling maybe a bit trapped or up and down, like we were talking about earlier, feeling on this roller coaster of emotions. Some days are fine and some days it all becomes too much. But I've really noticed, especially last year, that some people were reacting very much kind of, oh, this almost isn't happening,
Right.
oh, it's all a load of rubbish. And then the people that have been, I think it changed this spring when things got, after Christmas and it got really quite serious again. I think a lot of people changed their mind again. But last year, yeah, seemed to have these people that really just weren't kind of bothered by it or taking it particularly seriously. And then other people, and myself and my husband actually got it, and my husband came down with it in last March
Right.
before,
Early.
yeah, really early before all the tests. And I have to say it was terrifying. We were terrified, and we I did have to take him into hospital, and I didn't know whether or not he was going to come out. I was sat in the car park in floods of tears going, "Oh my God, I don't know." It was that time when there were so many unknowns and it was really scary. And then I got it. So the people who I know that went through a similar experience that had it had a very different perspective on it. So we, after that experience, were very cautious,
Right.
played by the rules 1,000%, you know. Um, so yeah, does that answer your question? I
It
think
does, but it kind of poses others. So, first of all, how are you and your husband doing since then? And have you had any long-term effects, or did you have the similar symptoms? How did you experience it together? Because that is frightening.
it was, and he came down with it first with a cough, and we isolated straight away. And after 9 days, his cough just got worse and worse and worse, and wasn't getting any better. And all night awake, and I was lying there at night, and I was just like, God. And then he was coughing up blood, and it was actually really quite traumatic. And he just wasn't getting better. And I said, look, we need to call the number, So we rang them, and the process was really good. And they said, look, come into hospital because he had childhood asthma. I think
Right.
that's it affected him. We're not smokers. Um, so they said when he was in there, they took x-rays and they said, you're right on the edge. So the thing to do is go back home. You're not quite ill enough yet. Go back home, and if it gets any worse, we'll fast track you in. So that in itself, although I was so glad that he could come, was like, oh my God. So I didn't
It's a
sleep.
bit of a backhanded gift, isn't it?
Oh. And I remember this woman because we had to speak to about 5 different people on the phone of the NHS, and they were all amazing. And it was actually a very good procedure. And one lady said to me, and it just made me cry. It makes me feel a bit emotional now. She said, "Don't worry, everything's going to be okay. Just look after each other." And I could have hugged that woman now because it was like my mum talking to me.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
anyway, so but luckily, very slowly after that, well, then I came down with it.
Great.
Yeah, but not nowhere near as bad. I mean, I felt horrendous, but he started to get better. So it was the two of us on the sofa. We couldn't walk the dog, poor things. We were throwing tennis balls from
In
the
the house. I know that feeling.
but it was actually a really emotional time because it was scary and at points I just remember sobbing because and thinking, well, am I going to get better? You know, it's the worst. That's the most ill I've ever felt.
I sense you have experienced the same fear as everyone else did when they get the diagnosis that they've got it.
Yeah,
How bad's it going to get?
yeah,
And that's a sliding scale of extremes.
yeah,
So I imagine all day, every day, you're probably worried to wake up or relieved to wake up and it's not worse, but you've just got no idea.
yeah. Because no one knew anything, and they know quite a lot more now, a year on, and they've got more treatments and stuff. But that was exactly it. It was the unknown, and I was we talked to my mum every day, and of course she's in Dorset, and we haven't seen them for a long time, and she was just she tells me now that she was just like waiting for that phone call, texting me, just and it was. I mean, we were very lucky that it didn't get worse, but it took a long time to recover. Um, Joey probably took him, I don't know, about 3 months.
Wow.
But after the coughing went, it's this energy thing that everyone talks about. Like
Right.
you'd start to feel better, and then go, oh, okay, I've got energy this morning, and then 1 o'clock, I'd have to go to bed and just sleep. And it's definitely in terms of long COVID, it's definitely affected my energy level. So I just can't go all the time, which is probably a good thing. I have to have a little nap in the afternoon some days, and Joey's the same. So yeah,
It is really interesting to hear, especially because you had it so early. Um, that sort of overly cautious attitude that comes from it. Some people have said, our prime minister has been overly cautious in his approach because he got so ill. Um,
yeah,
it must be incredibly frustrating for you having had it when over the last year you've looked out and you see people, flagrantly breaking, protocols or whatever it is, the rules, not wearing masks, all this kind of stuff. Um, how did yoga, meditation, how did living in that world help? Because you've got to stay calm in those situations. That's heightened emotion you've just described there, right?
yeah. And even now, my heart's beating faster. I can, I've got
Yeah.
that feeling. What probably a better question to ask is how did it not help?
Right.
Because weirdly and amazingly, in the beginning of February last year, I went for the first time to India on just as it was kind of slowly kicking off. We
Yeah.
went to India for 3 weeks. We were so lucky to not get stuck there on a yoga trip. And we came back, and then it all just, very
Right.
quickly. And it was weird timing actually because it was, I know everyone says it's a bit of a cliche that it's a life-changing destination, but I don't know if you've been. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yes.
Like amazing, and I can't wait to go back at some point when we can. But so I had this 3 weeks in India, which really, so my practice has gone from probably over this last, no, definitely over this last year, and from the beginning of that trip, much more from a physical based yoga experience, and I always loved meditation, but I didn't really delve deeply. I just practiced it gently and lightly, to way more on the spiritual, philosophical, and meditation based
Mhm.
side. So, how did it help? Immensely. I mean, I was thinking about this question this morning, and one of the big things I think was, in yogic philosophy, they talk about avidya, the veil, the veil of reality, and how, when you reach moksha, liberation, or samadhi, when you reach that ultimate goal, this veil is dropped, and how this veil of our reality is actually made of all our life experiences that we've had, things that we've gone through, and choices we've made, and really our realities are decided by us. I think that's such an interesting concept. And with that, with the knowing of that, comes the power of shifting your perspective. So I kind of use this to go, okay, well, this, none of us has to go to work. We have money coming in, luckily, although it's been difficult. I have a roof over my head. This is quiet time. And after we both got well, I chose to see it as an opportunity. And I think that was a fantastic thing, because you can either, it's like anything, isn't it? You can either choose to see the positive in it, or you can choose to see the negative and fight it. And I've seen other people, go, oh, I've got nothing to do. I'm stuck at home. Oh, I feel trapped. Oh. And all you're doing really is beating yourself up, aren't you, in a way?
Well, it's also really unhelpful because
Yeah.
you're not changing anything.
No.
Actually, I think everyone can admit it's been crap.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, full stop, end of story. It's not, I mean, for me, it's not a debate. It's been pretty ropey at times, actually.
Yeah.
But I can't do anything about that. I cannot control whether or not I can travel for work.
Yeah.
But I can control how I work. So I focus on, and I think, we've talked before when we talk about kind of, mental well-being, what we focus on grows.
Yeah.
So if I focus on that negative mindset and that fear and worry and all that other stuff, I mean, it doesn't take long to institutionalize that.
No. Definitely.
And, I can see it already with certain generations of people, genuine fear and discomfort of what it means to, go back to how things used to be. I don't even know if I want things to go back to how they used to be.
No. No.
Let's make it new.
Yeah. No. And then that's another big part of it for us, as me and my husband, Joey, is that, I was working, doing yoga on the side, but still working as a makeup artist, so doing shift work and getting up regularly, and I mean regularly, at least 3 or 4 times a week at 3 a.m. in the bloody morning. And that is so incredibly bad for you. I mean, I can't tell you how bad that is for you. And Joey runs his own events business, which is, of course, is gone completely.
Yeah.
But was always working crazy, crazy hours. And what this did is it forced us to stop. And I think there's a lot of other people I've spoken to that have had the same thing, that actually, a friend even just yesterday, they've gone, what was I doing? Why was I running around like this crazy person, earning money to do what? Run around even more? Just living these hectic lifestyles that actually aren't nourishing, aren't supportive, you know.
There is such a fine balance, isn't there? I've shared before, I spent 5 years of my life literally sitting under trees, playing with crystals and healing energies, and there wasn't a greater, more personal growth time in my life than those 5 years I
Um,
spent. Yeah, beautiful, but it didn't pay the bills.
no. You've got to do that too.
So it was the most, and actually, without any of that responsibility, it was really easy to be calm and very balanced and live a really spiritual life. Um, I was talking to someone the other day, actually, because I had this musing when I was out walking the dogs, which was how I value stillness. And that's what I've appreciated about the lockdown. It
Yeah, massively.
created a different kind of stillness for me. But in my travels before the lockdown, I used to find stillness in my travels because I would travel on my own. I would be working, but I would have those moments of stillness. Of
Yeah.
course, when we're all stuck in the same place for a whole year, bar I think a week off I had in Scotland in September for my birthday. Um, and what came to me was, in the world we live and work in, people don't value stillness. They value
Or
results.
yeah.
I,
Or
I find I find it hard to find stillness in a world that values results.
yeah. And the weird thing is that the stiller you become, the more kind of productive you can be. I don't know if you
Right.
found in your practice, because you create space, and that has been huge for me this year. When, especially, I think if you struggle with anxiety or anything like that. And in fact, I think a lot of people are worried about being still because they suppress a lot, and they worry if they sit down, what's going to come up. It's not only is it an act of self care, but it is. I see it as kind of maintenance. When you sit down and meditate, you create that space, and it does. It means that when you come out of that space, you have more room for your thoughts. You're more creative. You're more
Right.
productive. Yeah,
Because people, I think, confuse meditation with learning to empty their mind
massively. Yeah,
rather than learning to bring your awareness to the present.
yeah,
And that was a big learning for me, actually. I used to think, oh, it's not working. I can't do this.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
there were so many thoughts coming into my head. And the guy who was my instructor, by the way, I gave up. But the guy who was my instructor was like, Brad, it's not about that.
Yeah,
And he used to say that all the time. I didn't get it. For years later, I suddenly I got it.
yeah.
Um,
The
and
aha moment.
yeah, okay, that's what it's. So actually, I can quite enjoy just breathing now, almost to the point of falling asleep. But I still, I have a. You can't see it. I have a post-it note just on my wall, out of view of the computer, that was put up this year that says carve out space for Brad,
That's amazing.
because actually that stillness it's hard to find it. And
Mm,
I think at the same time, what when I think of things like, yoga, especially from a spiritual and mindful practice, is you can learn then techniques to calm your mind, to not get worried or too caught up in things.
yeah.
How do your sessions run then? Because clearly it's all virtual, or have you at any point this year been able to get people under a kind of tent on the beach somewhere?
No, so I did consider doing some outside yoga with our weather being
Yeah.
so unpredictable. And so, yeah, so when we got recovered, I was like, yeah, I just don't want to stop teaching, and just took the leap. I bought some gear and just took everything online. And do you know what? It's been amazing, actually, because um, as a yoga teacher, there's something about that commitment to other people as well, and showing up. Sometimes if it's just you, and you're perhaps very new to meditation practice, or even if you've been doing it for 10 years, you're like, oh, do you know what? I don't want to do that today. It's easy to talk yourself out of it. But when you are showing up for other people, and when you're facilitating an experience, it's a whole nother, for yourself, it's a whole another thing that A, makes you feel amazing, B, you know in a time when everything is really uncertain, it gave me more structure. It gave me more impetus. And it really made me focus on building my yoga business, which I think would have taken me, if I was carrying on working, it would have taken me years to get to where I am now. So loads of silver linings. And in the beginning, I was a bit worried about who would like the virtual experience and who would come with me online. And a few people weren't so keen, but most of my lovely people that come to my classes have really loved it, because you don't have to get in the car on a cold winter's night, and and if you've got kids, this is the beauty of it. If you've got kids, they can be upstairs and you can run upstairs if you need to, and then settle them down, then come back down and carry on with your practice.
Yeah.
If you're not disturbing anybody, you can do it in your PJs. There's so many good things about it, and I've been able to keep that community going. And a lot of people have really needed the yoga just to.
Well, I was going to ask you that actually. I mean, the positive impact what you're doing is having on other people. Um, that's quite powerful, an impact to have.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel so honoured to be able to do it. It makes me feel a bit emotional actually, because
That's nice.
no, it's just the whole reason I wanted to become a teacher was so that I could share, so that I could learn more. It started with a yearning for learning.
Right. I'm going to just make a note of that because I think that's the title of the podcast, Helen.
And then it just was like, I need to share this with other people. How can I help other people feel this amazing? And I ran my first meditation course last year, and it was slightly terrifying, but also an incredible experience. And one of the ladies that came to the course was just like, "This is changing my life," and I can't tell you like how incredible that. I know you've experienced that yourself in your career, but it just made me feel so amazing. I mean, what a gift, because each time you show someone an experience and it adds to their life, they will show that to someone else, and they will show that to someone else, when they've had that really meaningful experience. And then it's this beautiful thing that begins to spread, and
Yeah,
just ripples of beautiful.
it's a nice community because it's spreading positivity,
Yeah.
um, which is really important at a time when actually I think as human beings we're more wired to think negatively. So keeping a negative mindset seems to be much more natural default for people than positivity.
Yeah, definitely. It's that thing that you said before, isn't it? About, it is a shit experience. It's been physically awful. I haven't seen my parents for over a year now, and I can't wait to cuddle, just hug them. But there are people that have lost their whole families. There are people that are pretty much destitute. And one major thing, I think, is gratitude. I don't know if you have a gratitude practice in your, yeah. And that to me is just completely invaluable, because whenever I'm like get a bit down in the dumps and like, oh, for God's sake, yeah, I just want to travel, or like you said, get out, and everything feels a bit hemmed in, I get out my little journal or even do it in my mind, and I just go through, okay, what am I grateful for? And it's so simple, isn't it? But it's so powerful. And I just go, start basic. I have a roof over my head. Some people don't have that. A huge population in the world don't have
Yeah,
that.
first world problems. I have no doubt we're all suffering from here over in our right. um, but to your point, actually, so I've been listening to a wonderful book recently by Teal Swan called The Anatomy of Loneliness.
Okay.
Highly recommend it. She actually narrates the book. And in it, she talks about like a gratitude box. So not where you would write it down in a journal, but where you would write things down. You would find pictures of people, of things, of good moments, and you put this together in your kind of your self-esteem and gratitude box.
Oh, how lovely.
And then when you have these moments, which are human,
Yeah.
don't have it hidden away in a cupboard. Have your box out somewhere and fill your gratitude box and then when you open it and you can see these pictures that make you feel happy, or of a time when you were smiling, or whatever it might be, for things that you're grateful for. Actually, I know it works. My feeling is that people think it's a little bit
Cheesy. Yeah.
the feedback I get when I talk about it on workshops. It's
Yeah.
like, well, what are you grateful for? Oh, I'm really grateful that I can watch the flowers grow in my garden. Now, for some people, that really is something they're great. I've actually been grateful. I've got a window onto my garden. I haven't seen the seasons like how I've experienced them this last year from
How,
this window.
yeah.
I've observed. I've taken mindful moments to observe it. But when I've shared that with some people, they've looked at me and they have mocked me for it and thought, oh, how nice that you can sit and look at your garden from your office at the back and watch it grow. Like, so I realize how privileged and obtuse it sounds. But if you don't look for what you have in your own world, you can't look for it in other people's, right? So
Absolutely.
this is my view.
Yeah. And you know what? It doesn't matter what it is you're grateful for. And I think if you tell people, so I read this amazing article, and it was all about, the scientific, the way your mind works with these kind of practices of meditation and stuff. And it actually, apparently, it's actually impossible to have, and I can't remember the science now, impossible to have negative thoughts when you're in that gratitude process. Apparently, the parts of your mind that go into thinking about what I'm grateful for and feeling that gratitude, the stronger that feeling of gratitude, you can't be negative at the same time. And that's why it works, because and the more you do it, you list it. So I go through my list of, okay, I start off really basic, like roof over my head, running water, money in the bank, heat, food in the fridge, my family, my husband, a loving relationship, my pets, the garden, the world, my healthy body. If you do it and you go through, it grows and it grows and it grows and it grows. And at the end of it, you go, holy shit, what was I bothered about?
Right.
you
Oh
know,
my God, my Sky account is blocked.
yeah, who cares?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because actually, when you're saying that, I know it just sounds so true when you say it, that if we made our own list, it would get longer and longer and longer. I think we have to make the time to be grateful for those things. And I wonder if now, as we come out of this, more and more people are kind of getting to that point where they're being a bit more reflective.
Mm.
Because I felt that in the first wave, I didn't really know anybody who had COVID. So I was kind of cautious of it, and I kept to myself, and everyone followed the kind of lockdown laws in the first wave, didn't they?
Yeah.
By the second and then this kind of third wave, I know a number of people who have had it seriously. I know of a number of people who have passed away from it. And actually, it's not like, a handful. We're probably 20 plus, 30 plus people with clients as well who have been hit with this. You and Joe adding another two to that list.
Mm.
And I think people have become kind of a little bit nervous of how dangerous it would be. So what you experienced right at the beginning, people I think are still feeling now.
Yeah.
And with the vaccine, I guess it will start to change.
Yeah, I think that's really, that it's like a beacon of hope, isn't it? And I think it's going to be, the next couple of years are going to be super interesting, um, to see how things go. But yeah, I had a friend, really good friend. She she's very anti-vaccine, and we've been meeting for walks, social distance walks and stuff. And it's really weird because we're interesting friends, because she is very her husband's a homeopath. They've very hippie, everything's really natural, and I love to try and be as natural as possible, but they're on the side of anti-medication and everything, and I completely respect her views, and we have really interesting conversations, because although I like to be as natural as possible, I actually grew up, my dad was a dentist and my mum was a nurse, so we're a medical family.
Yeah.
Medical family, we sit round at dinner time, we talk about abortions. I mean, who does that?
Yeah, right. Not regular at my house growing
Yeah.
up in North London.
So it's an interesting. We used to have these kind of discussions, and it goes in as a kid, these talking about all this kind of stuff. And I remember having this conversation with her, and Carmen, if you're listening, I love you. And we had this really interesting conversation, because we both respect each other, so it's a debate rather than an argument. And she was saying, I'm really worried about the vaccine, and it hasn't been, I don't trust it. A lot of people are feeling that way. And I never believed in vaccinations and stuff. And I said, okay, well, you're really lucky that she's got 3 kids in their 20s now, that they made it through their childhood. She was like, what do you mean? I said, well, if you look back on it, vaccination, immunizations, um, against smallpox, whooping cough, all these childhood things. In Victorian times, you'd lose 5 children. That children did not survive because of all these illnesses.
Yeah.
And this is just a small example. And I said, your kids are alive because of these advances in medical science. And also, I've heard that this has been pushed forward because everyone has thrown money in it, which doesn't normally happen in medical research. So we've been having these really interesting conversations, and actually, bless her heart, her whole family came down with it very just after Christmas. Um, so it would be interesting now, and they're well. They had it just mildly, but I wonder how her perspective has changed now, because I know they had a newborn baby in the family. They were all in one house, isolating together. They had to in the end, and they were terrified. They were terrified for the baby, and you know, I wonder how she feels about it now. I haven't had a proper in-depth discussion with her about it. So
I think everyone has taken the chance to reflect a little bit. You were mentioning before about, we're all in the same boat, but we're experiencing it differently.
yeah,
I had a friend on here last year, and he said it best to me. He said, we're not all in the same boat, Brad. He said, we're all in the same storm. We're all in different boats.
I love that.
Yeah, I loved it too. So it was
Yeah,
Kenny who came up with that. And I thought, yeah, you're spot on. It's
yeah,
the same storm.
yeah. No, that's so true, isn't it? Because you know, we've got friends that haven't been financially impacted at all. They're on furlough, and some of them have even gone back to work. And actually, it's been a real gift. And they have been very not been poorly, not really affected. And there are lots of people that haven't really been affected, seriously affected. And then, yeah,
And listen, there are also millions who have. I remember doing a workshop in May last year, and we were doing it for a European audience. And we had a couple of people on who were in Paris. They were living in small 2-bed apartments,
oh, God.
windows opened onto grills, no balcony, husband and wife working from home, both trying to get on the Wi-Fi, 2 young kids. homeschooling on the Wi-Fi in their 2-bedroom flat while the kids are sharing a room. And we were like 4 or 5 weeks into lockdown, and she was pulling her hair out.
Yeah, I bet.
So when we get to talk about, sitting in the garden or go for a nice socially distanced dog, living where we live,
You're so lucky.
right? Because especially in the first lockdown, I could go for a run in the morning and no one would see me. I could go for a walk in the afternoon with a dog as well, and I think that we are lucky. It's first world problems.
Yeah.
Um, I wonder from a yoga point of view, we've seen meditation and well-being become part of the corporate agenda in the last year, particularly, right? It's on leaders' agendas, I know, because I'm talking to them about it.
Amazing.
Inclusivity, meditation, well-being. These are no longer posters on a wall. These are actually, we have to be inclusive. We have to look after the well-being of our people. That's psychological safety, physical and mental and spiritual well-being. And then also the idea of, corporate meditations and people having sessions. I wonder, is there a place for yoga in the corporate market in the same kind of way? Could it form part of the well-being bit? Because when you were talking before about, when you've got that positive mindset, it's impossible to bring those negative thoughts in. What happens when you're in gratitude mode is what I call those happy chemicals that are released into your brain, right? So you're releasing oxytocin and serotonin into the system, and that's addictive. We want more of it. And once it's flooding the body with that, you won't hold that negative thought, because the brain can't hold 2 thoughts simultaneously.
That's it. Yeah.
It can only hold 1 thought at a time. So if you're in gratitude mode and you're releasing all these chemicals, because that's what happens, oxytocin is released into your system and you're feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
It's like it's the love drug, they call it. It's the cuddle drug. It's what connects people when they fall in love with each other. That's how good it makes. And because the brain can't hold that secondary thought, you literally have to physically push a thought out.
Yeah. There's no space for it.
Right. It works from a pure refocus point of view. Literally, there's no space in there.
You explained that so much better than I did.
but no, well, whether or not, actually, I'm not sure. I think what I've done is highlight the reason why that happens.
Yeah.
For me, the principle of the fact that it does happen shows how by meditating, by practicing yoga, by reflecting back and being gratitude, finding these mindful moments actually helps. I just wonder could you imagine a time when corporates run weekly yoga classes for their populations, and actually you're doing it either on screen or going into offices and doing it?
Why not? Why not? I mean, it works. It's just so lovely to hear that is on the agenda now, for these big companies. And the world is changing. It really is changing. And I love that yoga has become so much more mainstream. There are a few negative parts of that as well, but how great is that people are talking about this and realizing that it is essential to practice self-care.
Yeah.
And I do a class on a Monday night, and I call it Yoga for the Soul, and it's a really traditional yoga class. It's very gentle. We do 30 minutes of gentle yoga, and then we do 15 minutes of pranayama, breathing, and 15-minute meditation. And it's become my most popular class.
Wow. Yeah.
Last summer, everyone wanted to get fit and look good, and they were doing, the more asana-based classes. And now it's become my most popular. I think that's so telling that that slowing down, it's just so needed, that space. Yeah, in the corporate world, when you're under immense pressure doing these jobs, it can only be a really positive thing to, invite that into the workspace and as part of. That's incredible. How brilliant would that be to have that as part of your working life, that you have that time in the week where you choose to self-care?
Right, and I would imagine it would have just the most huge influence over the impact on decision making,
Yeah.
on collective and collaborative behavior.
Yeah, massively. I mean, they've done so much research into meditation, which I'm sure you know about, but where they show that it works on a huge array of a broad spectrum. I can't say it, spectrum
Yeah, no, you did a good job.
of different parts of your brain and different. So it's not just productivity. It helps you feel more compassionate. It helps you feel act with more kindness towards those around you. It helps you to be more positive. It helps you to be more social. It's better than sleep. So in terms of energizing the body and resting, it's actually better for the brain than sleep is, which I think is amazing. So
Yeah,
20,
well,
20 minutes of meditation can make you feel, and I've experienced that myself, way more rested than lying down and trying to have a nap for 20 minutes.
yeah.
Um, and you can concentrate so much better. There's just more clarity of thought. There's space for that creative process to work easier. If you're stressed, everything just becomes confused, doesn't it? You know. Um, so yeah, there's real scope. I mean, I think the possibilities with meditation are only just breaking the surface of how beneficial it is for us as human beings.
And ironically, we're thousands and thousands of years behind Eastern philosophizers who realized this a long time ago
What?
while they built out their ideas. Yeah, I know. Helen, we've come full circle. I'd love to end with one question, especially from someone who practices both meditation and yoga.
Mm.
When you look out and you look forward, what do you kind of hope to see out of all of this? Because you've talked about the gratitude and holding that space, and I love that. And we've talked about sort of bringing yoga to life for people to create that clarity. But when you look out and you look forward, what do you hope for now that we're moving out of this kind of lockdown world?
What do I hope for people in general?
Mm.
Well, I really hope that it's quite a difficult question because I can answer it from two angles. So
Oh, come on, then why don't you go give both, and we'll see which one we like.
okay, so from a yoga perspective, I think this opportunity, and it has been an opportunity. I love Sadhguru. Have you ever heard of Sadhguru? He's super famous in India, and he's like a modern day guru. In fact, he doesn't like the term guru. Um, and he said, "Look, this is an opportunity to be quieter and to notice what's around you and to really take stock." And I think that's been the massive thing for me, and that's what yoga does. It makes you quieten down. So even with the physical practice, you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You have to pay attention to your breath. You have to be in the present moment. And as a mindfulness practice, that's essentially what it is. You can't be thinking about your shopping list and your meeting tomorrow. You have to be in the moment, and that is so good, isn't it, for anyone? Because the more you're in the moment, the more clarity of thought you have, the more everything just begins to quieten down. And the more you practice that, the more you benefit from it. That practice just evolves and grows and grows. So with the physical practice, you've got that, and then with meditation, that just grows with that, and the breathing, pranayama, um, is just an amazing tool. I know Wim Hof has got really popular. People are really starting to understand that you can, on a level, control your emotional reaction to something. So if you're feeling really anxious, there are tools. If you
Yeah.
really suffer from anxiety, there are tools that can make you feel way more in control, and you can avoid that panic attack. You can really calm yourself down. And I think that's empowering for people as well.
Yeah, well, it enables others to act
Yeah.
rather than get stuck. I mean, they are powerful. I love it, Helen. Thank you so much for your energy and your stories today. I love it. I love the honesty. I think what you do is great, and I hope we can do some fun things this year together in some corporates and get yoga out there.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much for having me, Brad. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, Helen. Look after yourself, and I'll maybe bump into you walking. I must say to you.
Namaste. Thank you.
You're my yogi now for the intensive purposes of this lockdown.